Ever wondered who the very first supervillain Superman had to face in the Prime Earth universe was? And more importantly, how did he even become the Man of Steel we know today? Well, stick around, because I'm about to break it all down for you. But before we dive in, thanks for clicking on this video. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's leap in. The story kicks off at a fancy high society meeting inside a building. Looks like a lot of deep pockets here. We see a guy named Glenmorgan offering another man a drink to celebrate a new business deal they just closed. But the guest turns him down, saying he doesn't touch alcohol. Suddenly, Superman flies in and sticks the landing. He mocks the whole room, calling them rats, and claims he's their worst nightmare. Naturally, everyone starts pointing their guns at Kal-El. Downstairs, the police are storming the building, led by Detective Blake. Inside the elevator, one officer is second-guessing the whole mission because Glenmorgan is basically Mr. Metropolis. Are they there to bust the mogul or the cape? Meanwhile, back upstairs, a small man who was just talking to Glenmorgan is begging the arriving police for help. This little guy claims Glenmorgan's been kidnapped. Then, this little guy escaped via the elevator, but his expression? Totally sketchy if you ask me. At the same time, the police squad finds Superman literally dangling Glenmorgan in the air. Superman tells them he'll put the old man down the second he confesses his crimes. In this panel, Superman looks like he's ready to toss Glenmorgan off a building. Not exactly the Boy Scout vibe we're used to, right? Glenmorgan is screaming for help like a terrified toddler. He's still refusing to talk, though. The cops threaten to shoot if Superman doesn't drop him. Seriously? Shooting Superman? Not the brightest move, guys. Since Glenmorgan won't budge, Superman takes a leap. He jumps off the building with Glenmorgan, scaring the living daylights out of the old man. Luckily, he catches him midair and hits the pavement so hard nearby cars actually bounce. Stuck in that position, Glenmorgan finally spills everything: the fraud, the labor violations, the whole deal. Superman warns him, if he keeps this up, he'll be back. Meanwhile, Detective Blake and his crew are racing down to catch up. Once they hit the street, Blake declares Superman under arrest. But Kal-El is totally chill. He tells the cops they should focus on real criminals instead of him. One officer actually fires a shot, but come on, small bullets are like peanuts to Kal-El. Finally, he just pushes through the crowd and takes off. He starts sprinting through the streets at super speed while a hail of gunfire follows him. Doesn't even look like it hurts, does it? Meanwhile, Blake is calling in a full-scale manhunt to bring Superman down. The scene shifts to a command center where Sam Lane and Lex Luthor are having a chat. Sam, Lois Lane's father and a US general, is disappointed in Lex for failing to deliver Superman like he promised. Interestingly, we learn that Superman only appeared 6 months ago, and the name Superman was actually coined by Sam's daughter, Lois. Back in Metropolis, we see Superman dodging a wrecking ball that's about to demolish an apartment building. Problem is, people are still inside. Like what? Superman rushes in, stops the wrecking ball, and tells the residents to get out fast. Unfortunately, things get chaotic outside. One resident warns Superman that there's a tank heading their way. And yeah, the tank starts firing. But instead of a shell, it fires an electrified containment net. It actually catches Superman off guard and seems to hurt him, but he snaps out of it quickly. Grabbing the wrecking ball, he tells the civilians to run for cover. In one swift move, Superman slams the iron ball into the tank's treads, taking it out of commission. Sadly, he lets his guard down for a second and gets blasted from behind. Turns out there's another tank. Talk about being outnumbered. But hey, people know a hero when they see one. The citizens surround Superman to protect him, shouting back at the military. They urge Superman to get out of there while he can. Then Blake arrives with helicopters and a fleet of police cars, ready to open fire. But Superman is too fast. He takes to the sky and vanishes. Blake is left standing there, absolutely baffled by what he just saw. Later, Superman lands on the roof of his apartment and quickly swaps into his Clark Kent persona, complete with the dorky outfit and those iconic glasses. Then, his landlady, Mrs. Nixley, pops up. She notices some bruises on him and asks what happened. Clark lies, saying he got jumped because of an article he wrote that ruffled some feathers. And typical landlady move. She still asks for the rent right then and there. They chat briefly about Superman's appearance in Metropolis, which clearly rattles the old lady a bit. After Clark pays up, Mrs. Nixley mentions 3 people were looking for him earlier. Clark doesn't seem too worried, though. Instead, he picks up the phone to call his buddy, Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy and Lois are currently at the station, tailing a guy named Gus Grundig, one of Glenmorgan's former enforcers. Clark actually warns them to stop following the guy because it's dangerous. But since Clark works for a rival paper, Lois brushes him off and follows Gus right onto the train. This is where Clark starts to panic. He senses something is seriously wrong. In one of these panels, we see a man in a car saying, "A done deal, Mr. Glenmorgan. Uh-oh." And under the tracks, there's a bomb ready to blow. At the station, Superman leaps onto the tracks, ready for action. Inside the train, Jimmy and Lois see Grundig trying to break into the conductor's cabin. What is even happening here? In the bottom panel, we see Superman bracing himself to stop the high-speed train head-on. The train slams into Superman with incredible force. Meanwhile, Grundig spins around and pulls a gun on Jimmy and Lois right in the middle of the massive collision. But our duo is quick. Jimmy and Lois manage to tackle Grundig amidst the screaming passengers. Then, the bomb under the tracks detonates, sending the train flying off the rails. Looks like someone really wanted Grundig dead, doesn't it? The front of the train crashes into an office building, still moving at high speed. Inside, everyone is panicking, wondering if they're even going to make it out alive. The train skids onto the street, still crashing violently. Do you see the Daily Planet building at the end of the road? Back at command, Sam is furious at Lex for putting Lois's life in danger. Lex claims he had no idea she was on that train. But wait, endangering Lois? Does that mean Lex was behind the crash? For real? Anyway, Lex just says he did it because Sam needs Superman, and this was the only way. Finally, on the screen, the train grinds to a halt as it smashes into the Daily Planet wall, with Superman slumped right there in front of the wreckage. Superman wakes up strapped to a chair. He's jolted awake by the voices of his captors, who are honestly shocked he's even conscious considering the massive sedative dose they gave him. But Superman isn't just awake, he's furious. He starts struggling, trying to break free from his restraints. And yep, just as we suspected, Superman is being used as a lab rat by Lex Luthor and a team of scientists. Lex is obsessed, literally questioning what this guy is even made of. Then, John Irons storms in, and he is not happy. He calls out the ethics of the experiment and demands they stop immediately. But Lex and his associate, Corbin, couldn't care less. Lex basically tells him to chill out, arguing they're just examining a specimen with skin as hard as steel. Since this totally goes against Irons' morals, the bald genius calls it quits and resigns on the spot. Just a heads up, at this point, Lex, Corbin, and Irons haven't become their superpowered selves yet. Once Irons leaves, Lex cranks up the cruelty, ordering a 300,000-volt shock to be sent straight into Superman. Talk about a villain origin story. Meanwhile, in another room, they're testing Superman's cape. They've shot it, torched it, nothing. Not a single scratch or a loose thread. General Sam Lane is baffled. But then an officer interrupts to tell him his daughter is at the gate wanting to see him. Lois, is that you? Turns out, Lois came to the base to convince her dad that Superman is one of the good guys. I mean, he did just save a whole train full of people. But Sam is stubborn. He insists Superman is being handled by experts. I mean, sure, Dad, but does handling have to involve torture? Back in Lex's lab, Lex starts interrogating Superman, accusing him of being an alien scout hiding among humans. You can almost see the paranoid wheels turning in Lex's head, which, okay, from a human perspective is kind of fair. But the torture? Still a bit much, Lex. But Superman is starting to get his strength back. He actually starts trash-talking Lex, mocking the fact that a normal human's eyes can't blast energy like his. A triggered Lex orders another shock, but suddenly, zap! All the computers go dead. Coincidence? I think not. Back outside, Sam is done listening to his daughter. He tasks John Corbin with handling the stubborn Lois Lane. Lois tries to grill Corbin about Superman's whereabouts, but the guy with the mustache just gives her the runaround. Meanwhile, Superman, now fully recharged, literally rips the chair out of the floor and hurls the whole thing right into Lex's observation room. Lex screams for the alarms. Man, This doesn't feel like the typical polite Superman, but you've got to admit, it's pretty cool. Superman takes Lex hostage, demanding he return the items they stole from him. In this chaos, the guards are basically useless. They just stand there watching as Superman drops Lex like a sack of potatoes. Superman makes his move and recovers his cape. As he's making a run for it, he passes a room glowing with a strange light. Then he hears a voice. Hala Kal-El. He enters the room and finds a small Kryptonian craft. Sensing a connection he doesn't quite understand yet, Superman crystallized the ship solid. My assumption? He somehow understands how the system of this craft works. But the soldiers catch up. Seriously, here we go again. Superman spins around and his eyes start glowing a menacing red. Uh-oh, things are about to get spicy. Using his heat vision, he melts their weapons right out of their hands before continuing his escape. But at the stairwell, he's surrounded by a sea of armed troops. At least we know he's not the type to actually kill them. So Superman pivots and heads for the elevator shaft. He flies upward and smashes into a moving elevator car. But guess what? More soldiers. There are soldiers literally everywhere in this place. When Lois finally prees an elevator door open, she finds Superman inside, standing over a pile of unconscious guards. Before she can say anything, he takes off. And look, there's Corbin right behind her, watching the whole thing. With Superman gone, John Corbin tries to convince the scientists to greenlight the Steel Soldier project immediately. Now that John Irons is out of the picture, Corbin feels free to push this project forward, the one that fuses man with metal. Sounds like the birth of Metallo is right around the corner. Later, we see Lex in his car, talking to someone on the phone. Turns out, this mystery person was the one who leaked the info about Clark being an alien from Krypton. But here's the kicker. Lex has no idea who he's talking to. He demands to know, what are you? And in the final panel of Part 2, we see a massive alien ship looming over the American night sky. Clark wakes up in his apartment and someone's hammering on the door. Talk about a rude awakening. He scrambles to hide his suit and get presentable. Jimmy tries to call right then, but Clark's like, "Not now, Jim." He opens the door to find his landlady, Mrs. Nixley, standing there. But she's not alone. Detective Blake is right behind her with a squad of officers. They push their way in and start tossing the place. Quick side note, Clark is a journalist known for exposing corruption in Metropolis, so he's a constant target for Glenmorgan's goons. And that includes Blake. Blake accuses Clark of being in cahoots with Superman because he's always writing about him. But Clark plays it cool and dodges the questions. Even when they check the bag where his suit should be, nothing. Empty. Safe. Finding zero evidence, Blake and his crew finally clear out. It's a miracle they didn't find the cape, right? Well, there's a reason for that. Mrs. Nixley actually swiped the cape and hid it just in time. As she hands it back to Clark, she looks him in the eye and asks, "Are you from outer space?" Later at a cafe, Clark and Jimmy are venting about how hard it is to take down Glenmorgan when the guy owns all the media outlets. To make things worse, Glenmorgan is using the Superman threat to distract everyone from his own corruption. He's literally framing Superman as an alien invader. As the days pass, the propaganda starts working. We see people on the news falling for it, shouting about how they don't want an alien living among them. But amidst the hate, Clark gets a mysterious call telling him to head over to the Factory of Tomorrow. Something big is going down. At the factory, Clark interviews a guy named Mr. Tide, who's busy bragging about his success. But Clark doesn't let him off easy. He grills him about the lack of jobs and poor conditions, which ticks Tide off. Suddenly, Jimmy and Lois burst in, trying to hijack Clark's interview. While Clark and Lois are bickering, Tide decides he's done and tells them all to get lost. But then, things get creepy. The robots in the factory suddenly spring to life on their own. They start chanting weird stuff about destroying all life on Earth. Okay, now the party's really starting. Meanwhile, back at the US Army lab, John Corbin is stepping into a massive suit of iron armor, ready to be fused with the machine. What is this? A budget Iron Man? But something goes sideways. His eyes turn a glowing green, and his voice completely changes. He starts screaming and speaking in tongues like he's possessed or something. Corbin grabs a scientist by the throat and declares, I am the voice of the colony of the Collector of Worlds. Instead of running, Lex actually tries to welcome the entity. This guy is seriously unhinged. Finally, Corbin lets out a deafening roar and stands up, fueled by pure rage. His voice booms through the lab with one terrifying question. Where is Superman? Turns out, every piece of metal across America is forming these robots, and they're all saying the same thing. They're hunting for Superman. Lex tries to warn the soldiers outside, but then John Corbin appears, literally clutching the head of a scientist from inside his armor. Meanwhile, at the Factory of Tomorrow, a crowd of robots is staring down Clark and the others. Even Mr. Tide is clueless about what's happening. Clark just shouts, "Run," and vanishes into thin air. We know the drill. It's time to suit up. The news is spreading fast, and it's total chaos. Back at his place, John Irons switches off the TV and opens a locker to reveal a massive suit of iron armor. Oh man, a new hero is entering the chat. Meanwhile, the robots are tearing down fences and on the move. Then, Superman arrives. Using his raw power, he starts tearing through the robots to buy the civilians time to escape. It's pretty obvious these machines are only interested in one guy, Superman. While Superman is busy with the Metal Horde, Detective Blake rolls up with tanks and squads. Seriously? This guy is still trying to arrest Superman in the middle of an invasion. But right behind Blake, a 3-story tall robot towers over them, repeating, "Where is Superman?" Superman braces for impact. But then this giant robot grabs a nearby tank and uses it as a makeshift head that can actually fire shells. Talk about a dangerous upgrade. It takes aim and blasts Clark directly. Looking at this panel, you can tell that hit had to hurt. Lois and Jimmy scramble to start their car, even though Jimmy feels bad about leaving Clark behind. Check out this page. The robots are actually looting museums. They keep saying, "Terminats will preserve significant artifacts." What is this, some kind of space collection? As Jimmy and Lois try to speed off, someone blocks their path. It's John Corbin, but he looks totally possessed. In one breath, he's begging for help. In the next, he's claiming to be the voice of the colony. Do you guys have any theories on what's actually happening here? Drop a comment below. While Superman tries to stop the giant robot by hurling a car at it, things get terrifying for Lois. The alien-possessed Corbin starts attacking them. Lois tries to snap him out of it by bringing up his past, but it's no use. Corbin keeps demanding to know where Superman is. Finally, Superman swoops in, ready to deliver a knockout punch. But after using his X-ray vision on Corbin, he suddenly stops. Wait, why? Because he hesitated. The robot army swarms him with everything they've got. Corbin, whether it's his own voice or the aliens, says he's been waiting for this moment to take Superman down ever since he first appeared. Superman can handle robots, but he's caught off guard by Corbin's raw power and gets blasted clear across the city. We see a military truck nearby with Lex Luthor inside watching the whole thing go down. Superman hits the ground with a massive impact, and Lex starts to panic. But something's off. Lex tells the driver to get off the bridge immediately. He looks up at the sky and whispers, "Something is coming." Another alien fleet? The truck speeds away so fast it skids and flips over. Luckily, Lex is okay, but what they see next is nightmare fuel. They look up and realize they're trapped behind a giant energy wall, and there are these weird spider-like things crawling all over it. Where exactly are they? Back to the Superman versus Corbin showdown. Corbin is ready to finish the job, but backup finally arrives. John Irons, rocking armor that looks like a prototype of Corbin's, steps in and says, "Superman, I'll take care of this." Epic. Irons goes absolutely beast mode on Corbin. He's furious that the tech he designed is being used for this kind of destruction. But then, Superman looks around and screams, "The city! What happened to the city?" Metropolis has been lifted. The entire city is being pulled into the sky behind an energy shield, with millions of people inside. Lois, Jimmy, even Glenmorgan. The alien in the sky, who's also piloting Corbin, is planning to add Earth to his collection. Superman says the people in Metropolis are still alive. He can still hear them. General Sam Lane, who finally calls off his troops, asks the big question. Can Superman save Lois? Can he save the whole city? Standing in front of a massive cloud of smoke and debris, Superman says he has a plan. But he's going to need some help. Superman has to reach that alien spaceship way up there. But can this rookie Superman actually do it? General Sam says Superman has never even clocked over 600 miles per hour, but Clark isn't having it. Nothing's impossible, he says, as he starts sprinting with everything he's got. And hey, look, he's even wearing an oxygen mask. Using a ramp for extra lift, Superman launches himself into the air. He's moving so fast his boots literally disintegrate, and the jump is absolutely massive. He reaches space, surrounded by a bunch of man-made satellites. From a distance, he spots his target, the alien ship. Since he hasn't quite mastered flying yet, he starts space hopping from satellite to satellite, trying to grab onto the vessel. And he makes it. Yes! But Superman doesn't realize that a giant metal tentacle is creeping up behind him. It's the ship's defense mechanism. The tentacle snags him and hits him with a brutal shockwave. The tentacle drags a weakened Superman inside the ship, where alien guards start blasting him. They call him a Kryptonian. Now, we're getting somewhere. The K word is finally out in the open. But wait, it looks like those blasts are actually yellow sun radiation, which only makes Superman stronger. Big mistake. Superman goes on a rampage and clears them out. At this point, even he's starting to wonder what this Kryptonian thing is all about. After smashing the guards, Superman starts searching the ship for Metropolis. He has to stay stealthy to avoid the rest of the alien army. But seriously, how do you fit a whole city inside a spaceship? He eventually finds a room filled with giant glass tubes. Some contain miniature cities, others hold strange clothes. Superman looks at one city and realizes it's the place from his dreams. Is that Krypton? He also spots a tube with a white suit that feels oddly familiar. Meanwhile, inside the abducted Metropolis, Lois is pinning the whole thing on Lex. They get into a heated argument, but Lex denies everything. He actually has a hypothesis. The giant glass walls surrounding the city remind him of files from Professor Ray Palmer. His theory? They've been miniaturized. Lex hands his binoculars to Lois so she can see for herself. Suddenly, a swarm of spider robots appears, sparking a total panic. Jimmy says if they want to survive, they have to follow Lex. The trio makes a run for it and duck into a nearby building. They end up in Glenmorgan's hotel, where the mogul is hiding out with some guests. Lois is still grilling Lex about Superman and Corbin. Lex claims he's the only one who can save them because he's the one who's been talking to the aliens. Then, he actually makes a call to the alien boss. During the chaos, Glenmorgan realizes he's talking to his bartender. Wait, isn't that the same guy from the very first scene of the story? Anyway, the alien voice on the phone says a deal is a deal. They'll trade the Kryptonian for the city's safety. Wait, trade city for Kryptonian? But when they look up at the cracking glass sky, they see a massive Superman logo. Superman is peering into the Metropolis jar. He asks the alien what they want. The voice answers that they are the Collector of Worlds, known by many names. But on Krypton, they call him Brainiac. Suddenly, Superman is blindsided. He's slammed into the Metropolis tube, shaking everyone inside like an earthquake. He immediately fires back at the aliens. The alien voice admits they still don't know much about Krypton. It turns out Brainiac wants Superman as his ultimate trophy. Superman recognizes the name Krypton from his dreams. Brainiac then gives him an impossible choice: save the Kryptonian city of Kandor or save Metropolis. If he chooses Kandor, his people will be awakened and he'll never be alone again. But Superman doesn't hesitate. He refuses to choose, vowing to save everyone. This inspires the people of Metropolis, and they start chanting his name. Using his vision, Superman spots something inside a military truck. Is that the Kryptonian craft he saw at the base? He turns back and tells Brainiac he's made his choice. The citizens are confused, and Lex starts egging them on, trying to turn them against Superman. Superman says he only wants one thing from Brainiac's collection. He smashes a tube and grabs that white suit. As soon as he puts it on, it turns blue. Superman declares he's taking Brainiac down and bringing everyone home. But Brainiac drops a bombshell. Krypton is gone, and everyone is dead. He tells Superman that if he won't be a collectible, Earth is next on the chopping block. Now, Brainiac finally reveals himself. And standing right behind him? Is that John Corbin? Inside the shrunk-down Metropolis, Lex is still being, well, Lex. He's yapping about how he doesn't trust Superman and how his diplomacy with the aliens was the real answer. But his ego trip gets cut short when Jimmy yells, "Incoming!" The final showdown between Superman, Brainiac, and Corbin is on. Brainiac has apparently done his homework on Superman's powers, even noting that his heat vision is faster than a bullet. Looking at Corbin, it's clear he's more of a puppet being yanked around by Brainiac than a willing fighter. When Corbin tries to blast Superman, Clark melts the laser beam with his heat vision, sending the energy right back at him. But wait, for a split second, Corbin snaps out of it. He starts calling out for Lois, claiming he actually tried to tell Brainiac to spare the Earth. Meanwhile, in the city, Lois and Lex are still debating who's the real hero here. But here's the creepy part. Glenmorgan tells Detective Blake about that little man from the bar, the one who didn't drink. Glenmorgan is convinced that guy was actually Devil. Chilling, right? The Brainiac-Superman Corbin brawl is pure chaos. Honestly, it's hard to tell if Corbin is himself or still a puppet. One second he's helping Clark, the next he's attacking. Superman is definitely feeling the pressure. Superman tries to break Corbin free from Brainiac's mental grip. But the clock is ticking. Brainiac announces that in just 7 minutes, Metropolis will enter microstasis mode. That's basically game over for everyone inside. Corbin lands a heavy hit, sending Superman flying into another alien city jar. Watching those tiny alien lives get tossed around makes Superman snap. He grabs a massive pillar from inside the alien city to use as a weapon. Did you guys notice how his suit's colors seem to shift here? Superman hurls the pillar, impaling Brainiac. The alien retaliates with a hail of gunfire, but suddenly hears a voice, "Hala Kal-El!" Where did that come from? Doesn't matter. Only 5 minutes left until microstasis. Suddenly, Corbin regains control. He tackles Brainiac from behind, pinning the alien and yelling at Superman to save the people. Superman reaches his massive hand into the Metropolis jar and pulls out that military truck Lex and the others were hiding in. Corbin warns Superman that Brainiac is taking over his mind again. Superman has no choice but to knock him out so he can negotiate with Brainiac. And by negotiate, he means business. A massive, even scarier version of Brainiac looms over Superman. But our hero doesn't flinch. His ultimatum? Put everything back where it belongs, or I trash this place. Now that's the Superman we love. Superman reveals he has the crystal computer system from the rocket that brought him to Earth, a tech that can freeze anything in crystal. He hurls the small rocket at the giant Brainiac, even as the first Brainiac tries to stop him. The rocket hits, and giant crystals erupt from inside the massive Brainiac, shattering him. Victory. And they did it with just 30 seconds to spare before the city was frozen forever. Talk about a close call. But then Superman collapses. Oh no, not now. Luckily, he manages to crawl toward the yellow sunlight to recharge his batteries. He cancels the stasis command and initiates the Earth's return. He smiles, looking at Earth from the UFO. Let's hope Metropolis lands in one piece. And yes, it is. Metropolis is back on solid ground. Families are reunited, and the nightmare is over. Jimmy asks John Irons if he's going to be a full-time superhero, but Irons seems unsure. Meanwhile, Glenmorgan has completely lost it. Who was that little man he met? And in the corner of the frame, we see Lex Luthor slipping away. Sometime later, at the Daily Star, Clark is chatting with his boss, Mr. Taylor. Taylor mentions he knew Clark's parents back in Smallville and says Jonathan and Martha would be so proud of him. Taylor praises Clark for his relentless reporting on Glenmorgan, something no one else was brave enough to do. Now that the mogul has fallen, Taylor suggests Clark aim higher, maybe a job at the Daily Planet? Back at his apartment, Clark is on the phone with someone named Icarus, who wants to collaborate on building a better Metropolis. Plot twist, Icarus is actually Lex Luthor. Hopefully he has no clue Clark is Superman. Meanwhile, in a lab, General Sam Lane is checking on a still-breathing John Corbin. Is this the start of Metallo? That night, Clark chats with Mrs. Nixley on his rooftop. She promises his secret is safe with her. It's pretty cool that the first person to know his secret is someone as trustworthy as his landlady. A few days later, Superman receives a gold key to the city in a public ceremony. Someone asks about his suit, and he explains its traditional Kryptonian formal wear that saved his life back at the last battle. He talks about his journey to Earth and growing up as an outsider, but he promises one thing: he will protect this planet forever. Lois then asks if there's anywhere he goes when he just wants to be alone. The scene shifts to a quiet cemetery in Smallville. Sadly, Jonathan and Martha Kent have passed away. Standing before their graves, Clark promises to use his powers for good. Then he suits up, flashes a smile, and takes to the skies. That's the beginning of Superman's journey in the Prime Earth, his true origin story. Hopefully, we'll see more of his adventures soon. All right, that was the story from Action Comics Volume 2, Issues 1 through 8. Did you guys dig it? If you have any other stories you want me to cover, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching until the very end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. See you on the next leap.